Hey guys, so we are just over 1 week into Heart of Thorns, and already news has been coming out about the future of the game. Of course, we bought the expansion, got a bunch of stuff, but you can kind of roll, I suppose, some of the price of the X back into the expected continuing updates that go forward after it. And some news, some word of what those updates are going to be has already began. So today I want to keep you in the loop with some of the new things that have been talked about, important dev comments about various things. There was an interview with Colin Johansson and then a big blog post that came out as well. So sit back, let's hear about how quickly ArenaNet really are going to start nailing those future updates and see what they've got in store for us. First thing to talk about is, yes, the Colin Q&A. I guess as a dev, you'd expect the Q&As and kind of PR stuff to melt away a little after you actually get your product out, but no, not for Colin. Still more interviews coming in, so he kind of just talked a little bit about how things have gone with the Heart of Thorns release. A lot of it's really obvious stuff, you know, the release was smooth, a lot of people have been enjoying it, there's obviously tons of new stuff. He, as a dev, is enjoying sitting down playing the game, but there were a few things that really caught my eye. First, he talked about Fractals. Now, I've already talked in a video to you guys about how Fractals have come out kind of lackluster. The rewards specifically are a bit of a mess, as well as the scaling balance at the higher end. Colin did say that that stuff was going to be addressed, which is great to hear. What wasn't quite so great to hear was in his comment that it was going to be addressed. He kind of said, oh yeah, you know, Fractals went well. It's just we need to look at some of the small details, such as rewards, XP, and balance. Okay, I can understand, right, if you're releasing a whole expansion, right, and Fractals are just a small part of the expansion, and these are just a part of Fractals, you could maybe consider that a small detail, but with respect to Fractals themselves, they didn't even add any new ones. They added new instabilities, yes, but surely making sure those are finely tuned and fun falls under balance, no? So I'm not quite sure how these were small details that were overlooked, but hey, at least they are going to be changed, and I can appreciate that very much. Further, he did talk also about Guildhall stuff, and kind of how difficult it is to acquire your Guildhall. Now, the interview kind of, you know, he focused a lot on, oh, hey, yeah, it's really easy to get your Guildhall, and that I totally agree with, right? Like, it is easy to get your Guildhall, right? Even for individual players, I think 100 gold's pretty basic at this point. Hell, one of the first achievements in the very first Verdant Brink mission at the very beginning of Heart of Thorns, all you have to do is defend a cannon, and the reward would be 10 linseed oil. Now, yeah, we're not at launch right now where, you know, that alone could have been 70 gold for a single achievement, but still, it's a fair price. And what we've got to consider here, obviously, is it's split over 10 people. But I think that what a lot of people are concerned about right now is how expensive it can be to upgrade your Guildhall. And boy, that is expensive. Particularly on the scribing side, we're seeing very costly things. Colin didn't talk about this in the interview at all, but, you know, just look at the way the releases happen. Many of the things that you need to craft as a scribe are coming from new content that people don't really know how to get. Like Dragon Stand, for example. I said to you guys yesterday that it's an easy meta event to push. Dragon Stand rewards you with stuff that scribes want. But it's only recently become an easy thing to push after, for the first week or so, people were learning how that map functions. And so, scribes have been stuck having to pay really high prices for limited materials, and there's a crazy high demand at that too, because so many people want to scribe, as scribing's the only thing that's been added. Scribing is very expensive right now. I don't know how much the devs really need to address it, because I think a lot of this will just settle with time as the markets settle. But they have at least said that some components are getting a bit of a change, specifically when it comes to account-bound stuff. Sometimes account-bound items really shouldn't be account-bound. I believe specifically the example given was paper, and so there is some news there that will be getting a change. But what you guys have to appreciate, and I would just add myself here, is that, yes, getting the Guildhall fully maxed out costs thousands of gold. Getting your scribing very high as well, when everybody wants it and it's a rare thing, also is going to be incredibly expensive. But these things are long-term systems. Specifically with the guild halls, they're long-term systems. 6 to 9 months worth of progress. You know, I've seen some sarcastic comments from people who look back at ArenaNet's original claims. Oh, you should be able to max out your guild hall. All the materials you need and everything for the scribing and so forth is based on about 10 people. If you've got a group of 10 people, you can max it out. And so then it's very easy, and I have seen, which makes me quite angry, people snarkily saying, oh, what, ArenaNet thought me and my 10 friends each had 2,000 gold sitting around in our inventory? How out of touch are they? Well, let's be real here for a second. Remember, it's 6 to 9 months worth of stuff. We're talking about actively playing the game for the majority of the year. And in that case, yeah, the prices will fall a lot more into line. In any case, moving on. The other huge thing from the interview was actually about world versus world. So a few things were talked about here. Number one, that world versus world is kind of a game type you do often see has peaks and troughs, you know, periods of lots of activity, such as during one of the tournaments they did, periods of very little activity, such as when they do, say, a Living World update. And we do seem to be in a bit of a lull with World vs. World right now. I know not many people are super pleased with it. Colin did talk about it in the interview, and I'll quote him directly here. And basically, the gist of this comment is that World vs. World isn't really where they wanted it to be. So listen to this. I'd also like to add, says Colin, one of the goals for Heart of Thorns was to address every one of our major game systems to ensure that they had all the core components we need for the future of the game. Our goal was to ensure that we didn't really need to tweak any major game system again after this expansion, and we could instead just focus on entirely adding new content and building on top of, rather than expanding outward systematically. I'll just butt in here for a second and say that I think all of us as players are happy about that. 3 years worth of iteration and less content than we possibly could have had has never been ideal, and I think that was a really good focus for them as a company at, the idea of an expansion. But then Colin finishes by saying, World vs. World is the one major feature I would say we didn't end up accomplishing that goal. The project is so large, it didn't end up fitting into the scope of the expansion, and we still have to work to do to address core fundamental issues like population balance, rewards, scoring, nightcap, and etc. So that's kind of sad news in some ways. It's kind of very good news in other ways, because it means that, ArenaNet haven't shoved this out in front of people's faces and said, hey, here you go, that's it, it's done. We're just gonna, from now on, add more little upgrades you can do to places, but that's basically it, right? So I am happy to hear that they want to push a bit more out. But I've got to say, and I have this perspective, even as someone who doesn't World vs. World that much, it kind of sucks to hear, okay? The project is so large, it didn't end up fitting into the scope of the expansion. The scope of the expansion, the whole point of doing an expansion, okay, was because Living World updates were great. From a consumer level, in the perfect world, they were great too. I mean, they were free updates, hell, right? They were a good idea, but there were things that could not fit into their scope. And that's why you do an expansion. That's why we got guild halls and stuff, because they could actually be developed over a long period of time and released all at once. And that's what the expansion allows you to do. And now we hear that World vs. World was too big, apparently, for the expansion. So I don't know how much confidence we can have this can really be addressed through Living World updates again, since it wasn't in the first 3 years. Maybe I'm just being a bit pessimistic. Obviously, a lot of updates have been made, and especially when Squad UI and stuff comes out, hopefully we'll see more improvements for the better. All right, so just before we get on to the big blog post, 2 big things I did want to talk about from the devs as well. One of them is to do with the new stats, concentration, and expertise. And so these, if you guys are totally out of the loop, I have talked about it on a video, but, it's been lost under a billion other things. Boon duration and condition duration are now functioning like ferocity into crit damage. They are percentage-based stats, but they now have a regular stat that you build into it. The reason that ArenaNet do this is then they can standardize like the way that their stats work, so it can be plus 900 power, plus 700 expertise, plus 700 concentration, and in this way you don't kind of bundle up percentages with regular stats. It's an important thing that they did, but they're bugged. They're completely bugged. This has been known for a while. I didn't realize this until very recently, and not only are they bugged, but this is the important part, that they are confirmed to be fixed. So even when you equip concentration or expertise-based gear, it does appear on your tooltip to have been updated. And looking at the skills, it would seem that they're doing better now. But actually, in practice, if your swiftness says it should be giving you 12 seconds, as the example I read on Reddit, and you use it, it will still just give you the 10 seconds. They completely are non-functioning. So those of you in PvP maybe using those amulets don't work. Don't go for it. And if you are one of these people that considers Viper's stats to perhaps be meta for some Condi builds in the future, maybe buy Vipers now while it's bugged and nobody's interested, before it gets fixed at some point in the future. Right, and then the other thing as well is also another fix. This is a really important one. I don't feel I've talked enough about it. When I've been talking about Heart of Thorns, I have tried to not include stalling bugs too much, or crashes, or personal story, bug-based issues that I've been having, because I appreciate that none of those opinions are going to be valid, like in a few weeks, especially like a month or 2 down the line when all of this stuff's been fixed. So I haven't talked about it so much, but there has been a big problem with Guild Wars 2, and this is the memory leak issue. This is when you randomly crash out of the game, it says a fatal error has occurred, it boots you out. This is horrible when you're, say, fighting the Mouth of Morgemoth, and by the time you get back in game, you cannot get back in the map. There has been some word that maps are trying to reserve slots for you if you're in a party with someone for like up to a minute or so, but it seems 50-50 for me. Sometimes I get into maps after I crash out, sometimes I don't. So I'm really not sure what's going on there, but the memory leak thing is being addressed. It is a high priority for them. There was a big post that went out on one of the Reddit threads to do with this, rather than the official forums, and so just so you guys are in the loop there. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk about in the video is this post that ArenaNet put up, talking about the future of the game. So the post was called The Road Ahead, and it's referring to basically the rest of 2015 for Guild Wars 2. Heart of Thorns is out. What do we have else coming on our horizons? They come out with some generic stuff at the start, you know, talking about how there's massive player populations now. We have much more people, and the whole game now is retaining those people. So let's see what they're doing. First, they explained, and I mentioned this in a previous video, actually, that when Heart of Thorns very first came out, we were in a period of very rapid-fire updates. Another patch, another patch, another patch, another patch. This was good in some ways, but in other ways, it was kind of bad. For example, if you're trying to push a map-wide meta event, a new patch comes out, you get kicked out right before the final Octavine's gonna die, for example. You all lose your credit. I shudder to think what it would be like in the Dragon's Stand. So they are slowing down with that now. And there are just as many bug fixes coming in, but they're going to be bundled together in less frequent big updates. That's where your memory fix is going to come in. That's where your expertise and concentration fixes are coming in, and so on. In addition to that, there are going to be small class balance patches too. So there have been changes to class balance in some way already, like what I talked about the Druid earlier in the week with your primary mechanic degenerating when you leave combat, and they changed that. But big patches are going to be every quarter. So they aren't actually specific about when our first big balance patch is coming out. Pre-launch, you guys might remember, there was a claim that they were going to assess the elite specialization balance when Heart of Thorns came out, and then see how they were used in raids and so forth, and make balance adjustments according to that. But there's no mention of that here. It just sounds like probably after Christmas, I guess, right? Because then it'll be Q1 2016. We'll have a big balance patch up, specifically, as I say, to shake up the meta and, you know, bring some more things into line. So that's going to be our first big balance patch. In the very, very near future, though, before the next year, we've got legendaries coming, we've got raids coming, we've got squad UI. This isn't actually new information. So the Spirit Veil, the first wing of the first raid, will be getting added. That's not just what we saw in Beta Weekend Event 3. That's the first encounter against the Veil Guardian, but then we'll actually be able to make more progress. And that'll be multiple encounters. That'll be, if you're actually interested in that, a lot of progression. A lot of people are kind of saying with raids, oh, you know, it's not actually that much content because you only get rewarded once per week from doing it. But I think those people are really underestimating the progression that guilds and groups of people have to go through to actually get to the point they can clear the raids. Hopefully, in the dream scenario, it's not, raids aren't in a position where we just have one mega tactic that allows any random 10 people to come together and clear it first time. Even knowing the best tactics, there is practice that has to be done, there is learning that has to be done, and that does count as content. Just because you're not being rewarded until the final time you do it, that doesn't mean it's not content, that doesn't mean it's not fun for those communities who actually want to raid. So there should be a lot for us to do as soon as the raids come in. With this patch, there is proper squad UI being brought back. Hopefully, you know, this lull we've seen in World vs. World, people will have mostly finished a lot of the PvE stuff at that point, and then they're going to see squad UI get slapped in, and that will bring up a lot more World vs. World stuff at the same time too, but we'd already heard about that. And then lastly, the 3 legendaries come at the same time. So what that actually means, guys, is you get legendary armor from the raids, right, which you can start to build at least. I don't know whether you'll be able to finish it. And you get 3 new legendary weapons, Astralaria, Hope, and Nevermore. All these things I just talked about, they're coming in a few weeks, they say. In fact, more specifically, they say mid-November. So we're already on November 4th as I record this video, but it's past midnight right now as I speak to you guys. So we're already a little bit into November, and it should be like 2 weeks from now. We see all those things go in, and that's pretty good for me. I'm happy to hear that the first patch did come out this fast. I think when you look at the original Guild Wars 2 release, we had to wait till Halloween for the first big patch, and that felt like a longer wait, so I'm happy. Right, so that's the mid-November patch. Then they say you've got early December. December 1st is going to be over PvP side of things. The first season begins. If you've forgotten what that means, remember these divisions where now as you play in PvP, you can get badges next to your name as you do better. You can work your way up through divisions. If you get to the final legendary division, you can actually start working on the legendary back piece in PvP. That stuff is all going to begin on December 1st. Then just a short while after that, December 15th, we have Winter's Day, and Winter's Day they did confirm is going to have new guild hall decorations, just like we have Halloween decorations for these guild halls, as well as new outfits and new skins. I wonder whether they'll give us another, like, a Night Fury equivalent. That'd be really cool if festivals from now on kind of have this crazy thing that super galvanizes the community and has immense prestige. That'd be kind of interesting. But yeah, so that's all they said there, and that's Winter's Day. Then that's the end of the year, guys. They did finally mention as well, and it's very important to note that they mentioned this in a big blog post like this, really laying out major stuff. They say that there's more combat culling happening. So the skill effects, obviously the readability of the game, the spectatability of the game, the ability to see big important tells in large Zerg fights, in raids even, stuff like that. They're still culling those effects away. So there was a small one. I don't even know what they changed. To be honest, in the last patch, I don't know whether anyone's even documented it. But apparently with Heart of Thorns release, they did cull that stuff away. Big Zerg fights still look like a mess to me. But they're saying, in this blog post, no less, among many other big things, that this is going to continue to happen. So I do take them seriously when they say that. And that's pretty much it. So the big news here is mostly the lack of something. Really, to me, I was very much hoping that Living World would kick off at least in the same year that Heart of Thorns released, but it is not. So I'm not too sour about this. They definitely do have stuff going on, and I'm probably not going to run out of stuff to do anytime soon. But yes, there is no Living World for 2015. They specifically say Living World and all those kinds of updates begin in 2016. So it could end up feeling an awful lot like Living World Season 1 did, where Season 1 began kind of early on in the year with Flame and Frost. We'll have Season 3 start early next year. I'm very curious to see what you guys think about that. I definitely think for pretty much everyone at the moment, we still have tons to do. You know, I've been capable of reading a lot of different opinions about Heart of Thorns over this past week and a half. Different things that people liked about it and that they didn't like. And of all the criticisms I found, there hasn't been very much, if any, of people saying, oh, I've ran out of stuff to do, I'm looking in, I've got nothing going on anymore, which is nice. But I'm curious, do you guys think that you're happy to wait until after New Year's to get the continuation of the story? But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Very glad to be able to keep you in the loop, as I hope to continue to do so. And I will see you tomorrow.